What is concurrency control? Concurrency control is database management system is a procedure of managing simultaneous operations without conflicting with each other. It ensures that database transactions are performed concurrently and accurately to produce correct results without violating data integrity of the respective database. The concurrent access is quite easy if all users are just reading data. There is no way that they can interface with one another. For any practical database, it would have a mix of read and write operations, and hence concurrency is a challenge. DBMS concurrency control is used to address such conflicts, which mostly occurs with a multiple user system. Therefore, concurrency control is the most important element for proper functioning of the database management system, where two or more database transactions are executed simultaneously, which require access to the same data. Potential problems of concurrency. Here are some issues which you will likely to face while using the database concurrency control method. Okay, lost update occurs when multiple transactions select a same row and update a row based on the value selection selected. Then uncommitted dependency issue occurred when the second transaction selected a row which is updated by another transaction, that is dirty read. Non-returnable raw non-repeatable read occurs when a second transaction is trying to access the same row several times and reads on different data each time. Okay, next is incorrect summary issue. Of this issue occurs when one transaction takes summary over the value of all the instances of a repeated data item and data transaction update few instances of that specific data item it, in that situation. The resulting summary does not reflect a correct result. Why use concurrency method? The reason for using concurrency control method in database management is first one is to apply isolation through manual exclusion between conflicting transactions to resolve read write and write conflict issue to preserve database consistency through constantly preserving execution of obstructions. The, the system need to control the interaction among the concurrent transactions. This method is achieved using concurrent control schemes. Concurrency control help to ensure serializability. Example is assume that two people who go to electronic courts at the same time to buy a movie ticket for the same movie and the same show time. However, there is only one seat left in for the movie show in that particular theater. Without concurrency control in the DBMS, it is possible that both moviegoers will end up purchasing a ticket. However, concurrency control method does not allow to help to happen. Both moviegoers can still access information written in the movie sitter database, but concurrency control only provide a ticket to the buyer who has complete a transaction process first. Concurrency Control Protocol. Different concurrency control protocol offers different benefits between the amount of concurrency they allow and the amount of overhead that have imposed. Following are the concurrency control techniques in database management. First one is log-based protocol. Second is two-phase locking protocol. Third one is timestamp based protocol. And fourth one is validation based protocol. Okay, log based protocol is there. Log based protocol in database management system is a mechanism in which transaction cannot read or write the transaction until it requires an appropriate log. The log-based protocol helps to eliminate the concurrency problem in database management system for simultaneous transaction by locking or isolating a particular transaction to a single user. A log is a data variable which is associated with a data item. This log signifies that operations that can be performed on the data item logged in DBMS help synchronize access to the database item by concurrency transaction. All the log requests are made to the concurrency control manager. The transaction produces only once the lock request is granted. Binary lock is there. A binary lock on the data item can be either locked or unlocked state, shared or exclusive. This type of locking mechanism separates the lock in DBMS based on their uses. If a lock is acquired on a data item to perform a write operation, it is called an exclusive lock. First is shared lock, second one is exclusive lock. First is shared lock denoted by S. A shared lock is also called as a real read-only lock. With the shared lock, the data item can be shared between the transactions. This is because you will never have permission to update data on the data item. For example, consider a case where two transactions are reading the account balance to a person. The database will let them read it by placing the shared log. However, if another transaction wants to update this account's balance, shared log prevent it until the reading process is over. Second is exclusive log denoted by X. With the exclusive log, the data item can be read as well as written. This is exclusive and can't be held concurrently on the same data item. X logs is requested using log X instructions. Transactions may unlock the data item after finishing the write operation. For example, when a transaction needs to update the account balance of version person, you can allow this transaction by pressing X log on it. Therefore, when the second transaction wants to read or write, exclusive log prevents this operation. Okay. Third is simplistic log protocol. This type of protocol, log-based protocol, allow transaction to obtain a log on every object before beginning operations. Transaction may unlock the data item after finishing the write operation. Fourth is pre-claiming locking. The pre-claiming locking protocol helps to evaluate operations and create a list of required data items which are needed to initiate an exclusion process. In the situation when all logs are granted, the transaction executes. After that, all logs release when all of its operations are over. Next is starvation. Starvation is the situation when a transaction needs to wait for an interdefinite period of acquire unlock. Following is the result for starvation. First reason is when waiting scheme for locked item is not properly managed. In the case of resources leak, the same transaction is selected as a victim repeatedly. Deadlock is there. Deadlock refers to the specific situation where two or more processes were waiting for each other to release a resource or more than two processes are waiting for the resources in a circular chain. Two-phase locking is there. Two-phase locking protocol, also known as 2PL protocol, is a method of concurrency control in DBMS that ensures serializability by applying a lock on lock to the transaction data which blocks other transactions to access the same data simultaneously. Two-phase locking protocol help to eliminate the concurrency problem in DBMS. The locking protocol divides the execution phase of the transaction into three different phases. First one is the first phase when the transaction being to execute, it requires permission for the lock if first locks is needed. The second part is where the transaction obtains all the locks when a transaction releases its first lock and then the phase starts. In this third phase, the transaction cannot demand any no lock. Instead, it only releases the acquired lock. The two-phase locking protocol allows each transaction to make a lock or unlock request in two steps. First one is growing phase, second one is shrinking phase. In growing phase, this phase transaction may obtain lock but may not release any lock. Okay? And in shrinking phase, in this phase, a transaction may release lock but not obtain any lock. Okay? It is true that 2-peer protocol offers serializability. However, it does not ensure that deadlock do not happen. Okay? In the above given diagram, you can see that local and global data deadlock detectors are searching for deadlock and solve them with resuming transaction to their initial state. Strict two-phase locking method. Strict two-phase locking method is more similar to strict two-phase locking system is more similar to two-phase lock. The only difference in strict two-phase lock never releases a lock after using it. It holds all the locks until the commit point and releases all the locks at one go when the process is over. Clear? Centralized two-phase lock. In centralized two-phase lock, the single site is responsible for lock management process. It has only one lock manager for the entire DBMS. Primary copy of two-phase lock. Primary copy two-phase lock mechanism. Lock managers as distributed to different sites. After that, a particular lock manager is responsible for managing the lock for a set of data items. When the primary copy has been updated, the change is propagated to the slave. Next is distributed two-phase log. In this kind of two-phase log mechanism, the log manager are distributed to all sites. They are responsible for managing log for data at that site. If no data is replicated, it is equivalent to primary copy. Two-phase log communication cost of distributed two-phase log are quite higher than primary copy of two-phase log. Timestamp-based protocol. Timestamp-based protocol is in DBMS is an algorithm which uses the system time or local counter as a timestamp to serialize the execution of concurrent transaction. That timestamp-based protocol ensures that every conflicting read and write operations are executed in a timestamp order. The order transaction is always given priority. In this method, it uses system that to determine the timestamp of transaction. This is most commonly and concurrently protocol. Okay, the log based protocol helps you to manage the order between the conflicting transaction when they will executed. Timestamp based protocol manage conflict as soon as operation is created. Clear? Here is the advantages of timestamp based protocol is schedule are serializable just like 2PL protocol. No waiting for the transaction which eliminates the possibility of deadlock. Disadvantage is starvation is possible if the same transaction is restarted and continually aborted. Okay. Validation protocol. Validation based protocol in DBMS is also known as optimistic concurrency control technique. Is a method to avoid concurrency in transaction. In this protocol, the local copy of the transaction data are updated rather than the data itself, which result in less interference while execution of the transaction. The validation-based protocol performs in the following three phases: read phase, validation phase, and write phase. What happens in read phase? In the read phase, the data value from the database can be read by a transaction, but the write operation or update are only applied to the local data copy, not the actual database. Next is the validation phase. In validation phase, the data is checked to ensures that there is no validation of serializability while applying the transaction updates to the database. Next is write phase. In the write phase, the updates are applied to the database if the validation is successful. Okay, else the updates are not applied and the transactions is rolled back. Characteristics of good concurrency protocol. An ideal concurrency control DBMS mechanism has the following objectives. Must be an ideal concurrency control DBMS mechanisms has been following objectives. Must be resilient to site and communication failures. It allows parallel execution of transaction to achieve maximum concurrency. Third one is it stores mechanisms and computational method should be modest to minimize overhead. Next is it must impose some constraints on the structure of atomic actions of the transaction. Here is the summary. Summary. First point is the concurrency control is the procedure in DBMS for managing simultaneous operations without conflicting with each other. Second is lost updates, dirty read, non-repeatable read, and incorrect summary issue are problems faced due to lack of concurrency control. Next is log test, two-phase timestamp test. Validation based are the types of concurrency handling protocols. The log could be shared or exclusive. Next one is two-phase locking protocol, which is called as a two-phase locking protocol. Transaction should acquire a lock after it releases one of its locks. It has two phases growing and shrinking. The timestamp based algorithm uses a timestamp to serialize the execution of concurrent transactions. The protocol uses the system time or logical count as a timestamp. This is all about the time lock manager.